let's start off with obviously the Super Bowl runner-ups, and obviously before that, the two-time Super Bowl winners out of their three total in this current era with Patrick Mahomes, the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, last year we've mentioned it many, many times that this Chiefs team was one of the weakest teams that Pat Mahomes has played with as the starting quarterback, but still it was one that went to the Super Bowl. So just kind of putting the bow up on last year, where exactly was this team one of the weakest that you've seen in the Patrick Mahomes era?
I would say it was pass rush defensively was like the big focal point of where they struggled. But offensively, it was just lack of depth at receiver, especially after Rashee Rice went out. And then the offensive line play was just, especially a tackle, what really, really struggled. Like the interior offensive line was obviously awesome. Creed Humphrey, Joe Thuney, and Trey Smith is one of the best interior groups I've ever watched play together. And they did it for 2 years together, which was maybe even 3 years. They were really freaking good together. And then lots of shortcomings in Juwan Taylor, and then a shuffle of Wanya Morris, Kingsley Suamataia. I think someone else might have played left tackle for them. I can't remember exactly, but, it was a really rough rotation at the tackle spots. And that ultimately, when you run into a really good pass rush team with really good edges like the Eagles, one thing's going to lead to another. And that defensive interior, as good as the offensive interior was for the Chiefs, they met their match in the Eagles. And not that they lost or got beat a ton, but they got beat enough that Pat was getting pressured left, right, and up the middle consistently. And that really, not having sound receivers, an aging and out-of-shape Travis Kelce, and just a defense that couldn't keep up with that Eagles offense because of the lacking pass rush, it was this whole culmination of dog shit that all just happened in one game, and that happened to be the Super Bowl, right? So, they added depth in multiple areas, and they added multiple talented pieces. So now it looks like they're heading back in the right direction, and they should be much better this season, at least from an analytics and on paper standpoint. Record might be worse. Mahomes might not be as good, and we'll get into kind of the reason why a little later in this segment. But, I have higher hopes for the Chiefs roster this year than I did last year. I don't know if that's going to directly result in them making the Super Bowl again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of wanted to talk about that receiving core that they had. You talk about an aging Travis Kelce. Was there anything else about, Mahomes' targets last year that you felt like, kind of caused them to come up short in the Super Bowl? Or even, was there anything with Mahomes that you felt like he was lacking last year? Because, I don't want to immediately – I don't want to talk about where this team came up short and then just not address any problems that came up with Patrick Mahomes. Did you feel like anywhere there?
Yeah, his deep passing was the worst it's ever been in his career. He had I believe, a 24% completion rate on deep passes when he's normally around the mid-40 to mid-50 range. Threw a lot of picks on deep passes, was incredibly inaccurate in general. He had I think his adjusted completion rate was 24%. So that's just straight up quarterback accuracy when he's normally, in the 60, 70 range, and his regular completion is like 40 to 50 range, low 60s maybe. But his accuracy was 24%, which is just horrible, and not like Pat Mahomes on the deep ball. And they don't go deep as often as they used to. But when you go deep with someone who's, got one of the best arms in the NFL and is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, you expect to hit more than double that, right? And it's just tough because you look at Xavier Worthy, one of the fastest players in the NFL. They had Hollywood Brown, another speed threat. Rashee Rice is an underneath yak threat, as is Travis Kelce. They had the pieces there to have a good offense. And I think once Rashee went down, everything kind of fell by the wayside, and they didn't really figure it out after that. And I think those struggles came up, especially because Pat couldn't go to Kelce as much. So he had to throw to a rookie wide receiver who was more of a gimmick player, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I think Xavier Worthy's a fine receiver. He's a good route runner, obviously great speed, or not even great speed, elite speed. But, people will look at yards and box score and say, oh, yeah, he was great. And especially in, the last 3 weeks in that playoff run, he was great. But if you look at how he got those yards, that Super Bowl is inflating his playoff performance. He got, I think, he had 3 targets, got 1 catch for 9 yards until the third quarter when he caught that massive bomb, or maybe that was even the fourth quarter. Like he was not the guy in KC. And I don't think, frankly, anyone really was the guy in KC last year once Rasheed went down. So I think Pat Mahomes needs to improve the deep ball. And I think they need to throw the deep ball more to get him used to doing it again, because he did it a ton when Eric Bieniemy was calling this offense and he was hitting every level of the field. Matt Nagy does not do that. And I think, like, yes, Andy Reid's calling the offense, but Matt Nagy is helping design it. And ever since he's taken over as the offensive coordinator, you have seen Mahomes' efficiency rates and where he's targeting on the field completely shift from what he was doing his first 3 to 4 years in the league. And that's why he's dropped off in the last 2 years, especially, is the offensive design that Nagy has employed is counterintuitive to what Mahomes does great as a quarterback. And it's not that he can't hit the short throws, because he obviously can, but like when he's doing that 60% of the time, and then you're asking him to throw deep and throw intermediate when you need it, he's not doing it as often as he was back then. So it's like, not that it's taboo or like unknown to him, but it's just like he's not repping it as often. So he's not as good in those areas. And I think that's where Pat Mahomes can take that next step. And what the offense needs to tailor to him towards is doing more intermediate and deep passes. Even if the success rate isn't great on those and you don't need to take those shots, do it anyways. Because guess what? You went 15-2 playing dink and dunk football for most of the season with injuries all over your roster on the offensive side of the ball and a defense that wasn't that good, and you still made it to the Super Bowl. So why not try to be extravagant and really take more risk than Pat Mahomes has ever taken? Because guess what? A risky Pat Mahomes is probably still going to go 12-5.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. I wanted to ask about Rashee Rice a little bit too. Obviously, you talked about, his injury obviously really was a huge blow to the Chiefs receiving core. And they're not out of muddy water yet, right? Obviously, right now they're still deliberating a suspension for Rashee Rice, according to Adam Schefter. The NFL, before I get into it, obviously this was upcoming potential suspension is for a street racing incident back in March of 2024, for those of you who are not aware. So the NFL right now, according to reports from Adam Schefter, wants at least, or at the most, 8 games in a suspension. Obviously very significant. And it seems like the Chiefs and the NFL are trying to do their, trying to get negotiations to work that out to maybe something a little bit lower. But say Rashee Rice gets suspended for those full 8 games. Like, where can Kansas City, look elsewhere?
I think that's why they drafted Jalen Royals, is just in case that he loses that time. Jalen Royals is very similar, like uber savant, I guess, in the short to intermediate game, especially on the short side. Those short crossing routes, the short out routes, the hitch routes, and just getting really good yak is what Jalen Royals is great at. And he's kind of a clone of Rashee in that style. And him going to the Chiefs, because if you have one of those, that's great. If you have 2, along with Kelsey, like the first route concept I'm thinking of is mesh, where you get Royals and Rashee crossing each other shallow on drag routes. Travis Kelsey's finding a soft spot in the zone and sitting over the middle. And then if all else fails, you got Xavier Worthy going deep, and then you have a receiver out of the backfield, whether it's Isaiah Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, or Brashard Smith. All of them are good receiving backs. Like, you have options. Like, that is probably, I don't know if it is, but that was probably the first route concept they put in camp this year was mesh, because mesh has taken over the NFL. It's become a huge play, and especially at the college level as well. So, and that would be perfect for this kind of offense, and that would still give Pat 3 levels of the defense to attack. You can either hit short with Royals and Rashee, over the middle and intermediate with Kelsey on a spot route, or a deep post, deep go route, or a wheel route from Xavier Worthy or the backfield. Like, you have so many options with that, and that would get the most out of Pat Mahomes' skill set. Obviously, you won't run that all the time, but if that's going to be their base pass concept, which I think fits the skill set of who they're going to employ on the offense, that's the best way to do it. And obviously, Marquise Brown can kind of fill in there. Tyquan Thornton, kind of that big body speed guy like Marcus Valdes-Scantling that they had a few years back. So you have guys that fit that kind of mold that Mahomes is doing good with, and it can also help him get back to what he was doing early in his career.
Yeah, absolutely. And, obviously, I kind of want to talk about Travis Kelce a little bit. It seems like the retirement conversations are not necessarily picking up, but they're still there. They're lingering. What do you feel like is a good timeline for Travis Kelce at this point in his career?
I think he's got a year or two left. I think he just wants to go out on top with the Super Bowl, which you can't knock him for that. But, just in terms of skill and where he's at in his career, like, I don't know if he's going to play. If I was the Chiefs, if he does not look better than he did last year by like week 5 or week 6, I'm thinking about splitting reps at tight end. And not because it's anything that Travis Kelce is doing wrong. Like, he's still going to have that chemistry with Mahomes that they've had since Mahomes entered the league. But you want to add more athleticism and juice. And we saw a breakout with Noah Gray, and they drafted Jared Wiley to be kind of the successor to Travis Kelce, because Wiley specializes as a split-out slot, big-body tight end, can play H-back, isn't a great blocker, but has really good receiving skills for his size. And when I remember scouting him at TCU, and I was like, oh, yeah, this is like kind of like Travis Kelce and what he can do in the slot and understanding zones and sitting down underneath coverages. And they drafted him. And I was like, that's like a perfect developmental pick to get him ready by year 3. And I think if Kelce isn't ready week 5, week 6, and isn't showing what he was in 2022 and 2021, I think you start plug and playing those guys and rotating them in more often. And that's going to allow this offense to evolve in a different way, where you're not just relying on one guy to take over the tight end spot. You can use Noah Gray, who's more your traditional tight end, and you can use Wiley, who's that move tight end, H-back, big slot, can go out wide. That Travis Kelce encompasses, at least at his peak, encompassed both of those players in one guy. And that's what made him so special. So, I wouldn't drop him under 60% of snaps, but I think you got to go like, 2/3 of the snap it's Kelce, and then it's the other third. Those two are splitting and rotating in for him to get their legs ready and get them going. Because if I'm not mistaken, Noah Gray, it's a contract year for him. I might be wrong on that. I'll actually look it up. But then you have Jared Wiley, who's the heir apparent, it seems like. He actually signed a new contract, so he's under contract till 2027. But either way, that gives you 2 tight ends after this year to kind of fill the holes that Travis Kelce's leaving behind if they don't add anyone else. And I think they both can do that really well. That's what I would like to see personally. I love Kelce. Like, I've always liked his play and his attitude and how he is as a player. But, it's 34, 35. End of his career is coming up very quickly, and it showed on tape last year.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I completely agree with everything you're saying. Like, me asking that question definitely is not me trying to be like, it's time for him to go. But it's definitely it's going to be a conversation that lingers. So I feel like it's important for us to address. Defensively, how do they beef up their secondary?
Secondary, they added a good amount of guys. Christian Fulton they brought in, who was great on the Chargers last year and is going to fit in really well in the Steve Spagnuolo, cover 2, cover 3 mixed defense. So I think he's a really good fit in the secondary. For depth pieces, they also added Mike Edwards, who's a super savvy veteran. And then they got Noah Williams in the 3rd round, who's a really solid corner as well. So they're deep at corner, a bit deeper than they have been at years past, even with losing Charvarius Ward was 49ers, not the Chiefs most recently. But either way, they did lose, some secondary pieces over the past couple of years. So they're kind of reloading that now. I think that's going to be helped with up front where they've been lacking in pass rush. They also added some good pass rushers as well. George Karlaftis is a good, a fine to good defensive end, but he's not good at pass rushing. He's just kind of a body out there. It's really Chris Jones has been the only pass rusher on that defense. I think he's accounted for over half their pressures over the past 2 seasons, which is just asinine to even say that out loud. So they went out and got his, apparent successor, but someone who can contribute right away. And Ormar Norman Lott, who's just a freak defensive tackle out of Tennessee. And then Ashton Lloyd out of Louisville was a really fun prospect to watch, really good athleticism, and could be a really good solid option opposite George Karlaftis and Mike Dana to kind of just fill in, be a pass rush specialist at first, and then work his way into the starting rotation. I mean, the defense got better up front and in the secondary with those additions, and I think is good. That's going to help get Mahomes on the field and run more of these concepts that cater to his skill set. And the defense is just going to play better in general, especially on the passing side. Run defense, they've always been good and always will be good, but pass defense is where they kind of fell off towards the end of last season.
Yeah. And I know you wanted to talk about Matt Nagy a little bit.
Yeah.
Obviously, you felt like maybe him designing offensive plays might hurt Mahomes a little bit, but I mean, where do you feel like that's going to kind of come down to the wire later on this year?
It's the playoffs. It's always the playoffs. Like, especially with a team as good as the Chiefs and a quarterback as good as Mahomes. Like, if you can't figure this out by, week 10, week 11, you don't have him really passing deep or doing anything else. Like, if I'm Andy Reid, I'm stepping in and be like, yeah, you're done. Like, I'm calling offense and I'm designing everything from here on out. Because Andy Reid's done it. He's shown he can call up a really good air raid pass offense, right? And he's one of the pioneers of the air raid back to his college days. And that's kind of not Matt Nagy's forte. Like, he's a fine run designer. He's good in the dink and dunk and designing targets out of the backfield and underneath. And that's why he was so good in Chicago his first years, because that wasn't really the thing in the NFL. That wasn't the meta, if you want to call it that. Mm-hmm. And that's why Mitch Trubisky looked so good his rookie year, was because he employed an offense like that, and that catered to Mitch Trubisky's skill set. So, it's really going to come down to where this team is come playoff time and what they're kind of running, because if they do the same thing that they've been doing the past 2 years, teams are going to be expecting that. They're going to be loading up and knowing they're going short, and they're just going to blitz the shit out of them and sit in a fire 2 zone with 4 underneath and 2 over the top. Be like, yeah, Pat Mahomes has sucked throwing deep lately. Try to beat us over the top. Yeah, you have Xavier Worthy, but if Mahomes is inaccurate, what good does it do you? Like, it doesn't do you any good. But The thing that might help the most for this offense, I believe, is the acquisition of Josh Simmons out of Ohio State at the end of the first round. This was a top 10 offensive tackle talent, really solid. And, we'll get into him a little bit later, but I think he's going to be a big, big, big focal point for this offense.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to get into Josh Simmons in a bit, but one thing that we wanted to talk about in our notes, obviously, is this happens, anytime a team is really good in any sport, specifically in the NFL. I feel like it's happened a lot. Like, you saw it with the Patriots. Now we're seeing it with the Chiefs, kind of just like this idea of, the
Chiefs, Thunder in basketball, like
the Thunder. Yeah. Thunder now. I'm trying to think of like some other situations where it's happened. Like, I mean, just when the Chiefs are this good, they're going to be on TV a lot. When they're, and specifically like the national big slot games, what's the America's Game of the Week?
Yeah,
Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football. They're going to be in the playoffs a lot. They've been in the past, 3 Super Bowls. So people are going to get a lot of Chiefs airtime. With that, there's a lot of they're going to see them win a lot. And then there's going to be a lot of accusations of, benefiting from calls, rigging games, and all that stuff that comes with really good teams. And it's, to me, and I'm sure for you as well, like, it's kind of gotten to a point where the accusations of rigging games has gone off the deep end a little bit.
Yeah,
in my opinion. So I know you have the stats and numbers that would kind of dispel any accusations. Although, no offense to the great numbers that you pulled up, I feel like it's not going to help because people are so.
No, it's not.
But I would love to give you some time to make your case on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people are going to have their opinions. Week 1, I know some bullshit's going to happen where everyone on Twitter is going to be like, the Chiefs get all the calls. Like, it's going to be something like, and it's.
I mean, last year, right? We won last year.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's. And, like, everyone's like, oh, Jawan Taylor's jumping off sides. I'm like, no, he's not. He's just timing up the snap really well. Like, as offensive linemen, we're taught, like, as soon as you hear the G of the go that tells the center to snap, you're moving. Like, that's what I teach my guys. That's what I was taught in high school, right? Like, and they do that in the NFL. It's called simulating a snap. And all great. Lane Johnson is the best at it. Sometimes it looks like Lane Johnson is moving and that ball hasn't moved, but that ball is starting to slide, right? Like, and it plays with people's eyes because the NFL footballs don't have like the white stripes on the panels. They only have the laces, and depending on the center's grip, if they have a traditional grip, like they're going to turn their wrist like this and it's going to look like the ball's not moving, right? Like, so there's a lot of people that are like, oh, he's jumping off sides, he's doing this. And I'm like, okay, but when you slow it down, he's actually moving when the ball is too. Like, you know, and you expect a ref to see that live, like a millisecond difference of when the ball moves and he moves. Like, sorry, it's human error. Do you want robots reffing the NFL? You could, but not going to happen. But anyways, getting into the numbers, okay? In terms of penalties in the aggregate against the Chiefs, granted, situational, there's not data on it right now, but I know situational people will say when the Chiefs get the flags, it's at peak moments of the game, and when they need a drive to continue or when they need to stop on defense, it seems like the refs are helping them. Look, I'm going to deny that. Like, I don't think that's really the case. I think most of the time these penalties are being committed as ticky-tacky as they are. They're still flags. Like, you can't just call something or not call something because it's a close game and it's exciting. Like, the call is the call. You make the call. And we saw that in the first Super Bowl between the Chiefs and Eagles on Bradbury's hold on Juju Smith. Like, he clearly tugs the jersey, and that clearly impedes him on the route. Like, that's plain as day the best example of it, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Getting into the numbers. The Chiefs were tied 10th in the most flags called against them at 142. They had the 11th most penalty yards against them at 954.
Wow.
They were 16th in penalty yardage difference, so they were plus 20. So that means they were teams were penalized 20 more yards than they were. So pretty relatively close split, and they were middle of the pack in the league in difference.
Do you know who was number one?
I think the Vikings were. Let me pull that up. I can pull it back up real quick. Penalty.
I would love to just see like what the number one was. Like
yeah, let me pull that up. And that was net yards, right? So net yards, yeah, Vikings they benefited the most at 415 yards of net. And then the team that was affected the most was Baltimore at 367. So, or negative 367.
Yeah.
So pretty neat split, right? Like one team's at 400, the other's at 300. Chiefs are at 20. Like,
yeah.
And if you're averaging like 7 yards of flag, 8 yards of flag, like that's a shit ton more flags you need to call to even get close to that, like as egregious as that split is, right? So on average per game, the Chiefs' opponents were penalized 0.76 times more per game. So meaning basically less than one more flag per game that their opponent got versus what the Chiefs got. So flag total and flag yardage was relatively even between opponents on full season and per game basis. And then the Chiefs only got 25 first downs as a result of penalties. The league average was 29 to 26. So 4 more first downs across a 17-game span doesn't sound like a lot, but 1 more first down in, basically 4 games can be a big deal and can shift momentum in a big way, right? Like, which momentum is another big conversation, which I'm sure we'll discuss in the amended piece, but whatever. And then in terms of individual player, Jawan Taylor was called for a penalty 14 times, which is the second most for an individual in the entire NFL. And Jawan Taylor is one of the most egregious, one of the biggest talking points when it comes to egregious non-penalties called. He was called the second most. And the ones that he didn't get called on, maybe there was probably a holding or two that was missed, but that's going to happen for every player and for every team. Like, if refs were perfect, holding would be called on every play because holding does happen on every play. Like, especially at the NFL level with how massive and strong and athletic these dudes are. Like, it's someone has to hold for something to break through. And unfortunately, refs miss it. And that's just how the game is. That's from Pee-wee all the way up to the NFL. And it's been like that since the 50s. Like, it's been a thing in the NFL, right? And then a lot of the Chiefs rigging games, in my opinion, is just people not understanding the rules, right? We talked about simulating the snap and tackles jumping early. The other big one, when people are like, oh, he's holding, there's a stipulation in NFL rules that if a defensive player decides to use a rip move, which you don't see anymore because of this rule and it's been a thing, where if they do rip move, where they're taking their arm from their hip and they're shooting it up towards the sky to get the lineman's arms off that, you are, as long as you're not impeding their path to the quarterback and you're working with them through their rip, you can keep your arms on him and locked up and not hold, as long as you don't impede his path to the quarterback. And a lot of people will see this and an arm across their chest, and they're like, oh, he's holding. It's not a hold. If you rip, it's not going to get called in the NFL unless you're yanking and turning the guy as he's ripping. And that happened, I think, like week 3 and then like week 10 and then 14, something happened like that with the Chiefs, where like someone had a rip move. They got rolled out of the pocket and Mahomes stepped up right by them. And they're like, that's a hold. I'm like, literally read the NFL rule book. Like, yeah, in high school, that's a hold, but not in the NFL. The rules are different. Just like in the NBA, you get a gather step. In high school, you don't get that. And I think college, you don't get that either. I might be wrong on that, but like the gather step is a big entertainment piece for the NBA, and it keeps the game flowing well, so you don't call it travel every other possession. It's the same thing with the NFL. If someone makes a rip move, you're allowed to stay engaged as long as you're not twisting and pulling their jersey or the player themselves, right? And then the last point I make is, and this is not me supporting the refs in any way, like the refs have to be better, like across the league, because of what I said with misholding calls.
Across sports, man.
Like across all sports, reffing has to improve. You know, like baseball is the biggest outlier in that, right? Like strikes, which is why the robo-umps are coming in. You know, like that needs to change in the MLB. The NFL it's constantly moving. It's not like every other sport where, like, you know, that there's something static that you can look at and you can tell right then and there if it's a flag or not, right? Like the NFL guys are moving. It's big mass. And we get all these slow motion replays and all these angles and all these close-ups. Like most of the time, refs are 10 to 20 yards away, if not further, when they're trying to make these judgment calls, and they might not have the best angle on anything. So again, this is not me defending the refs, but it's just painting a realistic picture of what we see is not what they see on the field. Like it's just not. And like that's frustrating. It sucks that we can't get it right every time. But like I said earlier, if we got it right every time, there would be a flag on every friggin' play in the NFL, and that would become unwatchable.
I totally agree. I totally agree with everything you just said. In terms of the refs, like I totally agree where it's like, we are so spoiled as football watchers to have so much technology at our hands, like from our couch. Like we have such a better view of the game, I feel, than like you said, people 10, 15 yards away on the field. And on that, like, you know, in instead of just saying, oh, the refs should just get better, like when you take that into account where it's like, oh, maybe they just have a bad view, it's like, we just got to get more technology into this. Like we just need, and it needs to be quicker. Like that's the thing. Obviously, when you bring in more technology, you know, when you don't have enough technology to get the rules right, people complain. When you bring in a lot of technology and then you're spending a long time reviewing and slowing the game down, people complain. Both of those, in my opinion, are totally valid. We just need to figure out which one is worse. And I think the one that is worse is the one where we don't have the technology to analyze them.
Agreed.
Because in 40 years, like say a play in the Super Bowl this year is completely game-changing and they completely get it wrong even after video review, right? We will remember that forever. Mm-hmm. But say they get that play wrong and then they review it and then they end up making the right call on the field, we're never going to remember how long that review took, in my opinion. No. You know what I mean? Like, we're never going to remember those games where it's like, oh, man, it took so long. But it's like people remember bad calls forever. So I just think I think with refereeing, like, there is, like, a physical, like, and mental limit that, like, you could be in terms of quality as a sporting official. Right?
Exactly.
We just need to incorporate that technology to be faster and more accurate so that we don't have to have this conversation anymore.
Yes, agreed. And I think the best example of that, of like what's worse and no one remembers how long it took to review something, the NFC championship game between the Saints and the Rams on the no-call pass interference. That forced the Saints to kick a field goal, and the Rams were able to win the game later because of that possession. Like, if that happens, like if that's called and the clock doesn't stop, in theory, like granted, they could have fumbled the snap, they could have fucked up an exchange, like anything could have happened. But 99.99% of the time, they get first down, they're running down the clock, they're kicking a field goal with 3 seconds left, and it's going through the uprights because it was going to be like a 25-yarder. And like, they've been missed. Field goals have been blocked. We don't know what actually would have happened, but like, come on, use your fucking brains, people. Like, we need a better review system in the NFL. We need to open it up to penalties that are not called, in my opinion. And like, that doesn't, like, it's not going to be perfect, but it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be better than the shit we have right now. And part of that is why people are talking about the Chiefs so much and how games are rigged. And there's all this speculation, especially with sports gambling, which is becoming a pandemic across the fucking country. That's a whole nother conversation we can have. But like, as a sports gambler myself, I will say that like like there needs to be regulation on it, and it's unfortunate there's not. Like, but it's such a money grab, and the NFL knows it's an entertainment league, so it's going to do this money grab with it. And with the officiating, they know it's going to get them talked about and give them views. And the NFL is king right now. They get views up the ass. Like preseason, a preseason game got watched more than Game 7 in the NBA Finals this year.
Yeah,
like that's stupid. Like, that's just stupid traction and stupid viewership that you get. Like, and the NFL knows that, and they leverage that. And that's just how it is. It needs to change some way, shape, or form. And the next step, which I think they're doing a good job of, is bringing back reviews for penalties that are called and making sure they actually are penalties, and having the chip in the footballs to measure first down. So when it's in a scrum and you can't really tell, there's something that tells you where the ball goes. And it's going to be slow. They've done it a few times in the preseason, and it's taken 2 to 3 minutes. But if it's going to give us a more accurate game, I'm all for it.
Yeah. And also, like, people are mad about if people get mad about the chip in the ball slowing down the game. Like, think about how much madder those people would be when it's time to have the old volunteer guys come out with the physical chain and place the ball. Which, don't get me wrong, I always thought that was like a fun part of the game.
That was.
I really enjoy like the physical chain, but embrace the technology, and like it'll only get faster and faster over time because we'll just get better and better at it.
Absolutely.
My last point on the whole Chiefs rigging and all this stuff, like, it's gotten to a point where we see in so many other sports that not only are there voices crying out that sports are rigged, but also to the fact that, which the NFL has actually kind of addressed in like their own like cheeky way with some commercials and stuff over the last few years. But I mean, there have been people have gone as far to say like, sports are scripted, which is like, all right. And I know most of those are a joke, but the way it dominates a lot of sports conversations now, especially on social media, really frustrates me. And to that, all I just want to say is, I watch scripted sports. I watch wrestling like once to twice a week, okay? I know, and I'm not trying to make myself an expert on anything, so, but it's like, I have an idea of what scripted sports entertainment looks like. I also know what it looks like when they're not doing a very good job of it. You know what I mean? Like, something like pro wrestling definitely has its ups and downs, and so I feel like, if they were doing a real bad job at it, we'd be able to figure it out.
Absolutely.
But let's keep moving on, and let's talk about our dark horse. You mentioned him earlier, offensive tackle Josh Simmons. What do you like out of this guy?
He's just so damn good in pass protection, which is what the Chiefs have been lacking in. Like I said earlier, would have been a top 10 pick if not for the injury. He had a patellar tendon injury, which is kind of like a big red flag in NFL circles, but obviously he's had a great recovery, looking like he's going to be the starting left tackle for the Chiefs. And in 2 preseason games, like, it hasn't been a big sample size, but he hasn't allowed a single pressure or a pass rush win to his opposition in those snaps. And the clips from camp, like, he's throwing NFL starting edge rushers to the dirt and pinning them down. Like,
Mm-hmm.
You don't see a rookie do that, let alone a veteran. Like, he's been just awesome. He's exactly what the Chiefs need in their left tackle. He's exactly what Mahomes will need to make this offense functional going forward. And, if, like I said, like if he was fully healthy, I think the Pats take him over Will Campbell at 4th overall. Like, not even top 10 pick, he'd be top 5. Like, he's that good.
That's awesome. I love explaining a dark horse with just, man, he's just so damn good.
Dude, he's just so damn good. And it sucks because it's like, yeah, he was injured. So, like, he didn't have a large sample size his senior year, and he was, like, working his way to be better his junior year. So I wish I had more, like,
totally.
I wish I had more to say. Like, yeah, his footwork is really good, but we don't know if that footwork's still going to translate with the patellar tendon. It looks like it has, but camp or preseason can get kind of, overhyped and over-exaggerated. But just from what I'm seeing, this is a franchise left tackle. Like, based on what I saw in film when I was scouting him, based on the reports from camp, how the Chiefs coaching staff is talking about him, like, this is going to be a home run slam dunk pick for them. And people are going to be like, how did this guy fall to 31st? And how, again, did the Chiefs get some unreal talent at this position?
Totally. And then finally, the burning question for the Chiefs. Look, this squad has accomplished a lot. They've won 3 Super Bowls. They've won back-to-back Super Bowls. But, the people I feel like hungriest for more rings are the people like Patrick Mahomes that have already been on the mountaintop and just they don't want to get off, right? So what can Mahomes and company finally do to get back to being one of the top teams in the NFL? They were a top team in the NFL last year, but it was clearly one of the worst teams, not worst with a T, but worst Chiefs teams we've seen make a Super Bowl. So what can they do to not only be a Super Bowl contender, but a great Super Bowl contender and a Super Bowl winner?
My Hollywood Squares answer is let Pat Mahomes call the offense and say, fuck whatever Matt Nagy calls. I'm running whatever I want to do. Like, that's what I would do if I'm Pat Mahomes. I'm like, I'm not running any of this shit this guy says. Oh, he wants to run inside zone? Fuck it. 4 verts. Let's go after it 1st and 10, right? Like, that's my fun answer. But my actual answer is he just has to take risk. And I think that's kind of, he's getting scared of taking risk. He's not taking the deep shots against double coverage. And like, yeah, he doesn't have Tyreek Hill anymore. So he doesn't have that faith in one of the most electric deep ball catchers in the league and just letting him go down and outspeed everybody. But he does have Xavier Worthy, who can do that. Not as well as Tyreek did, but, can do it and should be better in year 2. And you get Rasheed back, and you have more offensive weapons, and you have a better offensive line. Just take risk. Like, you're the greatest quarterback of this generation post Tom Brady. Like, you are allowed to play outside of structure, and you're allowed to play outside of the game plan, because you know what? People are going to remember you being that guy and going after it that way. Like, I'm going to be honest, I don't remember a single Pat Mahomes highlight in the past 2 years. I don't. Like, I don't remember a significant play Pat Mahomes has made in the past 2 years. But I do remember all of the cross-body throws he made rolling out his rookie year. Or not his rookie year, but his second year. I remember his second MVP season, how often he was flaring the ball in between 2 safeties closing, and he found someone on a post, and they would break away for a big play. Him scrambling and outspeeding defenders and being just faster than them to get first downs and touchdowns, and putting the team on his back. Those are the Pat Mahomes moments I remember. And highlights aren't everything, but when we remember quarterback legacies and just player legacies in general, that's what we think about. Like, when we think about Derrick Henry, we don't think about, 3 yards, 4 yards, 5 yards in a cloud of dust and him running over guys. We remember him stiff arming and juking and outspeeding everyone in his massive size. Same thing with Adrian Peterson. Same thing with Julio Jones. Calvin Johnson getting triple teamed and still going up and getting it. Like, that's what we remember about these players. And that's how I want to remember Pat Mahomes. Not dink and dunk, short game, take what the defense is giving me. Like, be a fucking playmaker, man, because that's who he is. Like, and it sucks. We're 40 minutes talking about the Chiefs, and no one wants to listen to 40 minutes of Chiefs talk. But, like, that's where it has to go. Like, I want him to get back to that so badly because he's the most fun player to watch in the NFL when he's on that.